evening, everybody. So glad to be back with you all this evening for another round of our deep dive discussion. And
664.
It's 664 for the 664 will be the song after the discussion here. So it's so funny how quickly you can fall into a routine of doing things. Last week, while Gary was preaching, I was feverishly taking notes, thinking of all these great points that I can make for the discussion, only to come to realize at the very end of his lesson that we were having our singing in the round. They are good notes nonetheless, and I think some of those things are going to tie into what we'll be discussing this evening, because whatever happens has, and what Gary was talking about with this has a great deal that matters with whatever we think. And so these are going to go in very well. So this final lesson, the focus shifts from internal to external. So we were discussing in the last 3 weeks, whatever you say, whatever you do, whatever you think. And now we're looking at the outside, the circumstances that happen that we have no control over. We have a large control over what we say, what we do, and a lot of what we think, and especially what we act on. But what happens to us and the things that are outside of our control, we have little to say about those things. And I'm so glad that Gary added this lesson to the end of this, because I feel like now it's complete. Now we have this idea that everything and everything that God allows to happen to us happens for some reason. If we have that perspective. Now everything that happens, we know that it isn't God. We know that there's chance, there's circumstances, there's the devil. And so everything that we know as Christians is in God's control. And so I think the key lesson that we see here, and what Gary was bringing out with Paul, is that whatever happens to him, he's going to rejoice. He made a determination beforehand that he would rejoice, and he was going to make the most out of his life no matter the circumstance. This is what the Beatitudes are all about. We are blessed. We are blessed because we have these things that are happening. It's the idea that no matter what happens, we are blessed because of it. And so this is what James talks about. And Gary could have taken that lesson many ways, and he could have still hammered home the same points there. And so circumstances, for a Christian, don't define our outcome. The mission still moves forward. Paul also says that identity in Christ doesn't change. It doesn't matter where we are, whether it's in prison, in the valleys, or on the mountaintops in the castle. Paul says that our identity doesn't change. It's not rooted in things of this world. And so when we see life this way, we move from why is this happening to us to what then? What's next? How do we go from here? And when we think those ways, it changes everything. It changes the terrain. It changes what we're going to do, because instead of giving the control out there, why is this happening to me? We say, what are we going to do about it? Now brings the control back into our lives, the responsibility back onto us. And so I love the idea of icebergs. I'm right there with Gary. I don't want to see one by accident. But this idea is such a wonderful illustration, because all we see is that top part. And I've used this idea, and I've seen it with those posters that may have success on the top of the iceberg. And then it has all these other words underneath it: hard work, failure, disappointment, all these different things that it's 80% of that brings the success. And in this way, I love what Gary said about this, and that those winds are howling, but the iceberg isn't moving according to the wind, because there's so much more underneath, and it's moving according to the current. And this is such a wonderful illustration. I've never heard that one before, and I really appreciate that. You know, in my own life, I felt the currents. And I didn't even realize that this was what it was until Gary brought this illustration up. About 6 years ago, some of you may know, I was battling for my sight. I was blind in my left eye since I was 16, and the same thing that blinded me began to happen in my right eye. It was right around when COVID happened. And I went through ups and downs with this. I almost lost my vision completely. I couldn't see barely anything. I couldn't drive. I had to be led around by my wife everywhere during this time, and it was very scary. My wife doesn't work. We have all these children. I was the only one working, and I was heavily medicated on lots of steroids and lots of antivirals, and I was just an emotional train wreck. And I found myself throwing one of my pity parties in my bathroom one day, and I was just on the floor sobbing. And Titus comes in. He was 6 at the time, and he asked, "Daddy, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" And I just told him, I'm scared, buddy. I don't know what's going to happen. I have so many people depending on me at home, at work, and in the church. And I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. I don't know how I'll be able to work or do all the things that I was doing before. I don't know how I'm going to support you guys if I lose my sight. And he put his hand on my shoulder. And he said, "Daddy, are you thinking about the good things?" And this was something that I would say to him often. I would say this all the time to him, not even knowing that it's internalizing for a 6-year-old to come and say that. And instantly, I started crying even harder at that point. And I was just, but it turned from tears of pity and the self-doubt to tears of joy, because at that moment, I started thinking of the good things and how blessed I was and how many people were rooting for me and how my wife and was just picking up the slack. My brother at work was picking up the slack. I had so many people praying for me, checking in on me. We had meals delivered to us all the time. We had just so many people in our corner. I hadn't prayed. I was the strongest in my prayer life I had ever been. And I wasn't thinking about those things because I was too concerned with, why is this happening? What am I going to do? And as soon as that thought crept in my mind, it changed everything. I made a determination then that I was going to rely on that current underneath and not worry about which way the wind's blowing. And I think that all of us have some sort of story like this that we could share, that you have some experience that something was happening, you had that pity party and you realized it wasn't working, it wasn't serving you any well, it wasn't serving you well, and so we had to say, what are we going to do? Because we know as Christians that God is in control. He's in control of everything. And the reality of the situation, like Gary said this morning, is oftentimes people fall off the boat because they think as soon as they're baptized that life is going to be wonderful. But in reality, that's when it gets even harder. Because the devil had us before that, and now he wants us back. So Jesus never promised us ease. He never promised us peace in this life. There was only one thing that he actually promised us: persecution. He said it's going to come. It's going to come. And so the goal isn't for us to have a problem-free life, a smooth life, but a steady one. And we see this in I think our lives would be very boring if they were problem-free. We often think we would like that. But try a movie or a book that has no problems, no tension, and no issues in it, right? There's obstacles to overcome, and this is what makes us strong. This is what makes us into the people that we need to be. You may have see sometimes on the side of the road when they're trying to do some greenscape in the medians, they'll have these trees up, and they'll have it right in the middle of the busy highway or something, and they have it roped down, and so it doesn't fall over. But what happens as soon as it gets a little bit bigger, they have to take those things off. They don't last. They rarely last because they never had the chance to stand up on their own. So with these ideas, we need to make sure that whatever happens in our lives, that God's in control. And just as Philippians 1 tells us that in whether to live is Christ and to die is gain. That we have, no matter what happens, it's going to be a win-win situation. When we're thinking that way, when we're thinking win-win, nothing can get us down, really, no matter where we're at. There's so many stories like the story of Paul that we could go to, but Paul's just a wonderful takeaway from what the gospel can do and what Jesus can do and transform in our lives. And he suffered all those things: persecution, he suffered stonings, he suffered shipwrecks, all these things, and yet he was still able to say, "I rejoice." And we can do the same. We can do the same. And so, before I open up for some questions, is there anyone that had any thoughts from this morning that you wanted to share?
Well, you kind of stole the thunder of the iceberg, don't you? That's a good analogy. I thought about that a lot today. About what everybody sees on the surface. If the wind's blowing against you, and if you have God's word guiding you, then you can face the opposition.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we understand that, hey, we are working with the current, and this, the God is the current there, and so many times people see just that what's on the top, that wind. When we look at David, and he was facing Goliath, nobody thought he stood a chance, but David understood the principle here. He understood that all you're seeing is winds, and I have a current that I'm working with. And so, yeah, definitely. A very good one. Any other thoughts?
It's so easy for us to lose focus when those tribulations happen and we see that wind, so we develop that excuse. The wind was blowing the wrong way. So I'm going to lower my standard.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we fall into that a lot.
Yeah.
Paul didn't lose focus. He said, "So what? Let's go on."
So what? Yeah.
And it's hard for us to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Sticking with the mission is really difficult sometimes, but having a clear path, clear mission really helps. And so when we understand that, and I think that's what faith is. The stronger our faith is, the clearer that path is. The less the things of the world make a difference in our lives, and the more we understand that, hey, we are in this for the long haul, for eternity, not just what this life has to offer. Very good.
The other thing that really stood out to me was Paul wasn't that popular at the time. He was
Right. With
was
anybody.
a bad guy. And he didn't join the club just to satisfy everybody else.
Yeah.
He stood strong.
Yeah.
Even though he had to stand alone, he knew what his goal and what his mission was.
Right. Right. Yeah, Paul had opposition from both sides in the beginning. He had to stand strong, and being able to weather the storm is so important, certainly. So, what do people usually say or do when life doesn't go the way that they planned? And in just the light of your experiences, not necessarily in the Christian lens, but what do people do when tragedy happens or when things don't happen? Say it again.
It's not their fault.
It's not their fault. Okay.
Why God let this happen?
Well, yeah. Why is this happening? Yeah. Why does God let this happen? A lot of people turn to God and they get angry with God. Yeah.
What did I do to make God angry?
Yeah. Right. Very good. Very good. Naomi?
Just like Job's friends, they were like, "What did you do to make God so angry?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. And so if that's the natural human nature response, what would it look like to respond to it differently with the lens that we're talking about here? Whatever happens, being whatever men and women. You got something, Waylon? Yeah.
Don't know what he said.
He just didn't make it happen. Satan did it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's the reaction as well, right? So what does it look like to respond to this differently when things don't go according to plan, when life doesn't meet our expectations? Yes, sir, Daniel.
A lot of times, if you look back at all the hard times that you've had or the things that you've gone through, it's because that you grew from that, and you went through something that was hard. But it's just like if you're working out, if you want to grow and you want to get better at running, you got to go through the tough to get you to where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we can't see that God's helping us grow by growing through certain things. Doesn't mean that that's always mean that God's putting us through that, because bad things happen to people. But if you can have that experience, like, how am I going to grow from this, or what's going to be the beneficiary of this, or how's it going to make me stronger? Is it going to make me stronger down in the long run?
Yeah. Often things that I try to say to myself is it's not a loss if you get a lesson out of it, and just try to reframe all the things that seem like they're losses. But even then, redefining what losses are and what that looks like, what success looks like, can help as well. All right, any other thoughts on that one? What would it look like to respond to life differently?
I do kind of have some thoughts.
Okay.
And then I can connect them to the beer. When we get back up and we stay joyous anyway, right? When stuff like that happens. I'm going to talk about yesterday, because we went to a roller skating rink yesterday, and it was fun, and it hurt a lot because I kept falling. I kept falling on, like, my hip is bruised, so if you notice me limping around a little bit, that's why. But like, it was fun, and I knew, hey, I want to know how to do this better. I want to keep practicing. So when I fell, instead of just like, oh, this sucks, I don't want to do this anymore, I want to stop, no more, I got up, because it's like, I want to keep going. Now, I think it's sort of like that with life. When stuff happens, knocks us down, we fall. Like, it's very easy to be like, okay, I want to throw this away, right?
Yeah.
I need to take a break. Where that connection sort of falls apart. It's just like eventually I had to take a break, or else I could have seriously injured myself more. But it's that sort of thing was like, in life, we're not relying on our own strength like we would be for roller skating, right? We're not healing ourselves. We're not keeping ourselves going. In life, we have God with us, and that sort of makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It's all about, like, on His strength, and on a combination, I guess, of our strength and His strength.
Yeah.
But He gives us strength, and we get up.
Right.
And we can smile, and
Right.
just keep going.
It
That's
was.
the way I think about it.
Ian and I had a conversation while we were roller skating yesterday. I said it was his first time roller skating, and he understood for him to improve, he was going to have to fall a lot, and so he went into it with that. He wasn't trying to fall at all, but he went into it saying, not, ow, this hurts, I need to stop, it doesn't feel good, but he's saying, I'm making progress because this falling is helping me. And we were there for about 3 hours, and from the time when he began, he couldn't move. He was doing this one where you just got sliding back and forth, not making any progress, and he was making it all the way around, without falling. And so it was
very shakily, but
yeah. But that's life, right? That's life. And this is what I try to tell my kids all the time when they're doing something that is difficult and they're getting frustrated and they're getting upset and they're discouraged. I try to remind them about the things that they've already done. Now, remember when you were learning how to do this or that, and it can help us. And I think this goes back to what Daniel was saying, that when we remember the things that we've gone through, it's like God's brought us through. God has. He can continue. He will continue to bring us through. Very good. So back to Paul. Why is Paul able to rejoice even when his situation looks like a loss? This is one of the big questions that Gary had brought up this morning. How can we rejoice when to the world it looks like we're losing? How was Paul able to do this? He kept his eye on the prize. Yes.
When he says to live is Christ and to die is gain, which is a hard one to parse
Yeah.
Then you have to sit there and really think about it. But, you know, when we die, we go someplace better.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter what came at him, pain. I mean, he was already had an issue. Like, he already had something, his thorn in his side, whatever it happened to be. But he just kept on keeping on because he knew that, like, if it came to a point, or when it came to a point that he was going to die, he was probably going to die for Christ.
Yeah.
And he was going to go to a much better place and have lived that promise that he made. So
it allows, like, when you go through life thinking that no matter what happens, you're going to come out on top, it dispels fear, dispels doubts, because whatever's going to happen, I'm going to win. It's going to work out for me. And this is what Paul was saying. So anybody else want to comment on that one? Why is Paul able to rejoice even when his situation looks like a loss? Oh, go ahead, Ian. Sorry.
I mean, he was in prison. Arguably, he's gone through a lot worse already, right? You know, he got shipwrecked, stoned, whipped, stuff like that. I mean, that hurt. Being in prison, comparatively, I would say that's kind of easier in a sense. You're not getting actively attacked, and
Sure.
you're not fearing for your life. You're actually being taken care of, in a sense. It's just that you don't really have too much freedom to leave.
Yeah, and he was on house arrest too, so he had his own apartment, and so he's like, "Man, this is nice compared to all the places I've been." And I think this can help too. It's like we've been through worse sometimes, or it could be worse, and thinking those things can certainly help. Yeah, very good. I think
I forgot to mention too that it was one of Paul's ambitions to preach in Rome.
Yeah.
And so what actually happened fulfilled one of his ambitions.
Yeah.
Not the way he had imagined it.
Yeah, so keeping an open mind, saying this is actually what I was asking for, you know, and because a lot of times we go through things and we miss, hey, we're actually doing what we want to be doing because of all the other things, you know. Yeah, we can get our prayers answered in so many ways. Like, for instance, Sarah and I, we've had a rough bout. As most of you know, we've been dealing with sickness and all kinds of things, and we got to find a new place to live in the next couple of months, and there's all kinds of things that are going on, and yet this is what we asked for. And when we remember that, it's like, yes, this is such a wonderful thing. We have such wonderful problems to solve. And so it's been great. It's been great. And with that perspective, it helps us get through those minor things. Max.
You know, there's an old saying, watch what you ask for because you just might get it.
Yep.
And I think about that a lot, especially in prayer. You ask, petition God for something, you're thinking, oh, wait a minute. What happens if he requests this, but he don't have a new job lined up for me? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And especially if you ask for patience. Yeah, that's the one that you're not going to get magically zapped with patience. You're going to go through the ringer to develop it.
I think in general, if you're asking for to be more like Christ, that means things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So, if stuff happens, you're getting your prayers answered.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, Jesus says, you know, take up your cross.
Yeah.
You know, that's not, you know, they didn't understand what that meant at the time, but that's not something that is an easy journey. Whatever that means, you know, it's not going to be something easy. So what's different about how Paul defined success or progress? What's different about his definition and perspective of this versus the world?
Christ was preached. That was his main thing he rejoiced in. There were people who were using it for their own selfish gain or from ill motives, and there are people who are genuinely passionate about and genuinely preaching it. So at the end of the day, Christ was preached. And that's what Paul calls success. That's really the only measure of success that matters. Is whether Christ is told of, whether he's shared.
Right.
Because that's how you get more people in the kingdom.
Right. You know, Gary and I have talked about this a few times. I think many of you have seen this in the world right now. There's this culture shift, I think, that's happening. There's a lot of people that are being more open to spiritual things than maybe in the past decades. a lot of influencers, a lot of celebrities. You see lots of people giving their lives to Jesus and these kind of things. There's a lot more talk of this stuff on social media and in the news. And a lot of times if we're not careful, we can be, upset about that in the sense of, well, they're not, following after the actual truth. They're just, following off something. They're not actually doing it, and it's just a facade, and we can kind of get caught up in that versus thinking of how many generations have prayed for this nation to turn to the Lord. And now that it's finally happening, we get angry about it, or it's not what we expected. It's not how we saw it happening. And so I think if that's actually happening, and our prayers of our forefathers are being answered right now, that this is probably the way that's going to look in the beginning, this huge transition. And there's going to be times when people are searching and seeking for things.
When you made that comment, you think that the Jews didn't think that their salvation was going to come through Jesus.
Yeah.
They thought of it on a different perspective, because the world thinks about like power, money, things like that, and they probably prayed for that for generations, and all of a sudden Jesus got there and they crucified him.
Yep. Wasn't what they were expecting. Yep. That's right. And they had this visceral reaction to it. And so these are cautionary tales for us. Making sure that we're defining these things in the right way. So how does shifting from why is this happening to what now or what next, what then, changes how we respond to situations?
More preparatory or preventative, you're thinking a little ahead of the game, and it keeps you positive because you're not being reactive to everything.
Yeah.
And when you get reactive to everything, you tend to get a whiny personality where it's just like, oh, why is it always happening to me? It's always happening to me. But you're like, it's going to happen. I might as well be prepared.
Yeah.
And then, and then there's some of us who over prepare. And, there's something in being ready for that to come because we know it's going to come.
And I think this is key for me, reaction versus responding. There's a big difference there. That most people in the world, if you look at their lives, they're just reacting to whatever is thrown at them. And I think one of the differences that separate us from animals is that we don't have to live in that reactionary place. That we can respond to things in different ways. We can choose against our nature or against things, and so being responsive is a much better place to be than reactionary. So go ahead, Ian.
This mean like reaction, right? It's react, react. So that implies you are acting in response to something, but we don't have to act. In fact, a lot of the times when stuff happens to us, when people are mean to us, for instance, we're very tempted to act in response. We're going to
retaliate,
react towards that person. We're going to act that back toward them. Jesus says, don't do that. To paraphrase, of course. And that's sort of respond, but not with reaction, in a sense. You more so respond with love, right? If you're going to do any sort of action, it's not going to be repaying or recompensing. It's giving. It's responding with love instead of hatred.
Right. And that takes choice, it takes control, it takes intention. And this is where the Lord, this is where the gospel comes in, this is where the love of Jesus comes in, when we are understanding his teachings. And he says when life does this, when life strikes out, like, think first before we react, respond. This is what the Sermon on the Mount is all about. He's saying things like turning the other cheek and going the extra mile and making sure that you restore your relationships with your brethren. And all these kind of things were revolutionary at the time. They were an eye for an eye society. And so for them to hear these things, and it's like there's more to life than just a tit for tat. And so we see the differences and the results of that through Jesus. We see that he lived this out to the ultimate. He paid the ultimate price. and how that really turned the world upside down in this way, this wonderful way that we have today. So, what tends to control our reactions on the surface? Thinking about this iceberg illustration. What tends to control our reactions on the surface?
Emotions.
Emotions, yeah.
Self-preservation.
Yeah, self-preservation. Yeah, we definitely want to protect ourselves and pride,
Fear.
fear. Very good. Very good. Yeah, that's a big one. That's a big one. What other people think is a big one. All right. Anything else? What tends to control our reactions on the surface? My expectations. All right, so what deeper truths should be guiding us instead? What deeper truths should be guiding us instead of allowing those surface things to cause us to react? Yes, go ahead.
Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Right? He's the exact same he was 2,000 years ago, and years, even thousands of years before that, and he's still the same now. Still the exact same person, the same God. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, what we can expect from that is just that we have this source of strength and of comfort that isn't going to pull the rug under your feet, right? And he's been that exact same source of strength and comfort to other people for thousands of years. And, I'm losing my shirt. But it's the same. And so he can offer those same comforts. And Ecclesiastes says nothing's new under the sun, right? So a lot of the stuff that happens to us, in a sense, there's newness to it. But like the fundamental aspects of it, the things that in a sense matter, are the same.
Yeah.
Right? The ways in which those things affect us emotionally, it's nothing new. And regardless of whether it was or isn't new, it isn't to God because he's outside of time and can just look and be like, oh, hey, look at that. He already knows. He knows everything. And his promises won't change. There you go. That was another thought that I was trying to get to and forgot. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Always the same.
Understanding that Jesus, that he's the same, that God is unchanging. This can help us understand that, hey, the same God that we read about in the Bible is who we serve today. Very good. What are the deeper truths should be guiding us instead? What Bible verses come to mind, maybe?
Matthew 6:34. Don't worry about tomorrow, worry about today.
Yep. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry about its own things. Yep. It's a very good one. And the one right before that also. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, right? Yes.
I want to say this is 2 Timothy, 1st or 2 Timothy, somewhere in there it says, God doesn't give us God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. And so that's what we should be looking on, right?
Yeah.
I want to say 2 Timothy. I don't think. Do you know?
I don't know. I'd have to look it up myself. But James says, count it all joy when you fall into various... What's that?
2 Timothy 1:7.
Okay, 2 Timothy, there we go. But James says, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, because the testing of your faith produces patience. And this is one that I try to use, and this is a really good one for the topic that we're talking about here. Anything else? Any other deeper truths that should be guiding us? Yeah. The Bible talks a lot about boldness. Yeah. And one of the things that Joshua was instructed by Moses was to continue on, to be bold, be courageous, right? And we saw that courage in him later on as well. Anybody else? Any other principles you live by?
Well, Paul was told early on the road to Damascus that he had a job to do. And the setbacks and the what ifs never changed the commitment that he had.
Yeah.
And I think we as Christians today, we have the Great Commission. That's a job for us to do. And it's so easy for us to let so many things come between us and that job.
Yeah.
Paul didn't.
Yeah.
None of the things that he encountered set him back.
Right.
If it was impossible for us to complete the mission, he wouldn't give us the mission.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times we're thinking that the way is A to B, and we may have to go through all the letters to get there. But when those things happen, by saying, "Oh, well, we're off track," is can deceive us and blind us from, hey, maybe this is the way that we needed to go to come in contact with these people or this situation, or have these things happen for us to grow. So, but keeping the focus on the mission is so important, because it doesn't matter where we are, we can still do that. A lot of times when we think of mission work, we think of out there in the foreign lands, and oftentimes we'll forget, like we have work right here that we can be doing right now too, and all of it's good. All of it's good. So, why is it important to accept that life will be hard as a Christian?
Just get on with it.
Yeah. If we know it's going to be hard, it's like, well, we just got to do it. We've been giving the kids antibiotics for an ear infection, and we tried to do it. Artie already knows. He used to fight it tooth and nail before, but he knows it's not going to be tasty, and so he just, all right, give it to me. I'll do it myself, and he just takes it. But Jubilee, she's still in denial, and Jaira is still in denial. They don't think it's going to help at all, and so they're fighting still. But once we see, like, it's hard, it's going to be what it is, but it's going to help, and let's just get on with it, right? Okay, so yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
This is nerdy. But in our brains, we have our amygdala, which is our self-preservation factory. Basically, it's the thing that is kind of, if you've ever heard of the lizard brain or anything like that, where it kind of tells you to be afraid in order to preserve yourself, like danger ahead sort of thing. But if you keep going at it, or you accept, okay, this is going to happen anyway, so I just got to do it, you can override that. And so in the example I always heard was a writer who just had writer's block and couldn't get anything out, nothing would come out, but if he sat down every day at the same time, his amygdala finally said, this is what we're going to do, so I guess I might as well do it anyway. And then he was able to get over that and put down stuff that actually mattered on the page.
Yeah.
And so if we're practicing, and I think this is part of Christianity, part of Jesus' message too, is that like you cast those anxieties on God. God will take them. You don't have to fear anything. Step forward in faith and courage, and you can get over that fear response. And it's a lot. Like, it can be a massive wall, or it could be a stepping stone that you just get over.
Right.
But that is an aspect of our brain that is, that affects us chemically, but we can get over that with faith and practice.
Right. And understanding those things and coming to terms with those, like, this is part of us. It's a human nature to feel fear. It's human nature to be impatient. It's human nature to have expectations. And then to recognize that and say, okay, well, what are we going to do with it now? Is how we respond to it versus reacting to those things. Very good. So anybody else, why is it important to accept that life will be hard as a Christian?
I mean, we have this false teaching all throughout I guess some more. You got all the televangelists, who say, God wants to give you a wonderful life. He wants to give you, if you trust in God, you just, or if you give money to my ministry, maybe, He's going to give you money and wealth and possessions and blessings and all sorts of stuff. Just like, basically just selling this false idea that's just like, it's happy-go-lucky, man. This is how you find happiness. They're trying to sell happiness in Jesus, and we can be happy in Jesus, but it's not because of circumstances. It focuses so much on making the circumstances better. That's not what Christianity is about. It's about making the mind in the circumstances better.
All right, that reminds me of, this question reminds me, there was this wrestler that I would follow, and he was an Olympic wrestler, United States, and he was participating in some tournament or something in Russia. And he was in this locker room. There's no hot showers in this part of the world. It was just winter time, cold shower, and he witnessed this guy get into the shower and just turn on the water and just take a shower and not expecting or thinking of it that, like, hey, this may be warm, and it was just always going to be cold, and it always has been. And he was saying these things to illustrate the mental toughness and how, like, these guys are just so tough because they live such a hard life, and how kind of we expect we have these comforts and things, and I think that when we go through life like that and we just think like it's just it's going to be cold, it's going to be hard, and that can help us brace ourselves for that instead of wishing it was something else and having those wishful thoughts. Any other thoughts on that? All right, so what happens to our faith when we expect life to be easier than it is? What happens to our faith when we expect it to be easier than it is?
We get disappointed.
Yeah, suffers. Yeah, disappointed.
Complacent.
We allow the worries and the cares of this life to choke us out. Yeah, get complacent. All right.
I would ask the question, Christ never did have an easy life, so why should I expect anything more than what he was doing?
Yeah. Very good. That perspective can help greatly. So what would it look like to respond with faith in the moment, not just after things settle down? What does that look like?
You have to put your faith in God.
Yeah.
If it's meant to be, it's going to be. So what argue about it?
Yeah.
You have to accept it and move on.
Letting go of your desire for control of your life, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of, I think, what kind of lies behind this, like, our suffering. It's just that this isn't how I want things to be. It's a stark reminder that things are outside of your control, and we don't like that feeling. Our nature is not very inclined to losing that control. We want that, but God challenges us and challenges our idea of control, of happiness, of contentment. And she's like, you just have to. I need you to trust in me here, kid. I need you to just trust in me, and that's just what we do. When it shifts from I need control to I need foundation, steadiness, right? And steadiness, and that's what we get with God. That's what we get when we can become the iceberg.
Yeah. So much I think it's built into our culture. We're in control of our destinies. We're independent. We're free people, and a lot of times that gives us an illusion that we're actually in control of anything. And in reality, we're not in control of much. And maybe what we say and do is pretty much how far that goes. But everything else is out of our control. And to understand and give it over to God is an extremely important thing that we can do in the moment, and I think that a lot of times reminders help me. When I'm in the moment of something, it can just seem like I feel like I'm such an impatient person, and I just want it to happen now, and it just kills me to see the process, and it's like, why am I not farther along? Why are there so many side roads and rabbit trails and all these things? I just want to get this accomplished, and to remind myself, like, this is the saying, enjoy the journey. Life's a journey, and not just the destination, that kind of thing. And remember that, that we are in the right place at the right time, and make the most of it. Even if we're not in the right place, what can we do about, making the most of it still? So, does anyone have any experiences that they would like to share, like something that was difficult and that ended up producing something good or meaningful in your life? Something that may have been very difficult at the time, but in hindsight was very helpful.
Adam, when my daughter died at the age of 22 with cancer, somebody asked me, he said, aren't you mad at God? Aren't you just disappointed? Why do you keep going to church? And I said, I can't be mad at God. He let me have it for 22 years. I'm not mad at God. But I said, the hurt is there, and it's still there after all those years. But he was just there for me, because I could not be mad at God.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. It's perspective is everything. How we look at life, how we look at things, because it's easy to fall into that, right? To be angry or say, why me? Why is this happening? And to have the perspective, like how long you were able to enjoy her for the time. Yes, it's very good. Anybody else have anything they went through that was difficult that ended up being helpful or meaningful?
Back in 2008, when I first started working in the career work, economy crashed, and I was one of about 500 people that were let go for the company I was working. I always showed up to work, did what I was supposed to do, but I didn't create any value. I didn't go above and beyond. It was more like an expectation. I'm just going to show up, do the work, and get a paycheck. So fast forward 5 years, I've lost my house, lost all my money, I have no vehicle. Wasn't for at least the blessing of my mom and dad, I wouldn't have had any place to live with groceries on the table. Go from making a good job to making minimum wage cleaning toilets. You learn very quick to appreciate what you have when you have it.
Yeah.
But I'll say more important than that, the silver lining I always tell people is if I ever get another chance, nobody else will outwork me. I may lose my job next time, but it won't be because of my work ethic.
Yeah.
If I was dismissed after that, it would be for other reasons. You weren't going to outwork me. To this day, that's still something that I hold fast onto. So learning to appreciate what you got because it can be taken away.
Yeah.
And always work with the talents that God has given you to the best of your ability.
Yeah. Amen. Very good. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
You have to know what your blessings really are.
Yeah.
Because we have 10 plus 3 plus 2 in our family. We have 10 grandchildren and 3 children and 2 daughter-in-laws that we would do anything for to help. All they have to do is let us know. And if we lose from that, so be it.
Yeah.
But the fact still remains, we're hugely blessed. And you have to be able to recognize those blessings and what they mean to you.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. And by us understanding, and I think that's part of keeping your eye on the prize, knowing what's valuable, having the right things valuable in our lives, learning from those lessons, and having the right perspective on on what we have and what actually counts as blessings. These are all the things that help us to endure the storms when whatever happens, because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. And so for us to go through those things with the perspective, it's going to happen and God's going to see us through it, is so critical for our faith. It's so critical for other people to see, because just by these few examples shown, it's just, I mean, I already think the world of you, and that just gives me so much more encouragement. And it just shows me an example of faith and of how we are to act and respond to this world. And, you know, it's all of us go through things. All of us have had things that happened in our lives that the Lord saw us through it. And so I guess to sum this up this evening, that we all will go through things, and to redefine what failure is and what tribulations and trials are is so critical for the life of a Christian. Because what the world sees as loss, we can see as great gain. And we have something that other people, if they understood it, would want desperately. And so are we living like that? Because a lot of times it gets so easy to get caught up in all those things, especially if you're in the thick of it, you're exhausted. You know, there's all the things that happen in this life can just beat us down, and we can forget to keep our eye on the prize, and we can forget to know what the mission is, and to take the time to reflect and learn those lessons that we need to learn so we can grow. And it's so wonderful that God has provided us with the structure so that we can do all those things. And we so fall into that habit of fooling ourselves into thinking that all we need is a straight shot. And that straight shot is never the right way. It's always going to be a zigzag and back and forth. And that's what gets us actually where we need to be. And so if there's anybody that needs some encouragement, needs some prayers, needs to just talk with somebody, this is what we're here for. We're here to help each other. We're here to lift each other up. I hope this format has been uplifting for everybody. If you have any feedback, any other comments or suggestions on it, I'm all ears to that. But if there is anyone that needs help, don't leave tonight without talking with somebody. And so if there is a need, please come forward while we stand and sing the invitation song.